Time to smash it up on a Monday night after a win. We don't take these for granted. That's now the second Monday Smash in 2024 after a victory. I see you, Troy Knoll. Happy Victory Monday Smash to you as well. Brett, thank you for mashing the like button. He's Irish Rafael, managing editor of Warchant.com. I am Tom Lang, and tonight on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, we're going to talk a little bit about the win. We're going to talk about the Florida game ahead, big picture stuff, the countdown to the end of the season. We brought the clock with us. I know everybody loves it. There it is. Look at this, single digits. Ira, how does that make you feel to see 5 days and under 5 hours until this bad boy is done?
Yeah, like a kid during Christmas. You know what I should have done? I'm kicking myself. I should have gotten like a big watch, like Flavor Flav, with the countdown on it, and just worn that all around the last couple of weeks, like at practice, at the press conference. Would they have said anything? Would they give me a hard time? Hey, man, what does that signify? Or do you think they would just let me do what I want to do?
I think they would know what it signified, and you know, you might have gotten from Norvell, like, I hear you. I'm counting down too, man. I'm counting down too. Today there was obviously a set of press conferences. I suppose we could start with that quickly, the news and notes. Press conferences with Mike Norvell. He was asked about the timeline of the coaching hires again. Could it even bleed into playoff season? Randy Shannon spoke as the defensive coordinator for Florida State after a 41-7 win. John Papuchis was available as well. But Ira, now that you've had a couple of days to take in the glory that was 41-7 and then hear the coaching reaction to it today, just your thoughts on their comments and then your own personal thoughts on where things are as we've got one fine football game to go against the Florida Gators.
I thought some of the more interesting stuff was about the defense, you know, from Randy Shannon and also a little bit of Mike Norvell talking about, you know, and it kind of continues what Norvell was saying last week, was what he wanted to see out of this defense. He wanted to see them play faster and he wanted to see them play like a little bit freer. And Randy Shannon today talked about how he wanted the players to feel like going to practice is not a chore. It's not like something you dread, or going to play on Saturday is just something you have to go through the motions, that this is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to enjoy this. And again, it kind of goes back to the course of the season, the comment you really focused on earlier in the year where Mike Norvell said, how much are you guys putting in outside of practice? How much film are you watching? Again, that all speaks to a team that played without a lot of passion and didn't have a lot of passion. And that was the disconnect. I don't think, you know, when we talked about, you know, and I know Jeff's made a big deal about this and other people have as well, that, you know, the topic of this team quitting, especially the North Carolina game. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. There are some signs of it, obviously, but I think the biggest problem with this team is at some point they just lost, you know, they lost that love and feeling, Tom. And I just think that manifests in a lot of different ways. And so one other thing John Papuchis said today, and this was all kind of new, they hadn't said this before, that, you know, after the firings happened and they went into that bye week, they basically talked about wiping everything clean. You know, listen, man, whatever you're sad about, whatever you're mad about, however the things have played out in the first 9 or 10 games, at least just take a fresh approach to these last couple of games. It's a new coaching staff. It's a new opportunity. And so, again, I'm not saying the Charleston Southern win validates that or says that they've turned things around or anything of those, but they're giving you a peek into what's gone wrong with this season. And it's not all about talent and X's and O's and play calling. It's about just this team not having, you know, really a passion to fight.
It's like the old Jimbo Fisher adage: go erase it. You got debt in life. You got problems. Just go erase it. It will be interesting to see as a comparison point the way they play this Saturday against Florida versus the Miami game, because for me, effort, passion, quit, whatever, I was throwing around some of those words I were in the post game after Miami because I saw several players just kind of jogging from station to station, which to me, it's never good. But for Miami, I mean, come on, like that's one of those sacred games where I thought the Canes played too, and after the echo of the whistle, you noted that as well. They honored what that game was about by playing a little bit on the edge or over the edge. I'll be interested to see this Saturday night when Florida State hosts Florida if you see a little bit more from a lot of those same players are in the lineups still. Are you going to see a little bit more of that play fast, play loose? Because there is something about the last game of a year. Florida State won't be in a bowl. It won't be obviously in a playoff or a championship game of any kind. sometimes that does evoke a little extra as well. So it could be that it looks a little bit different. I would think that confidence still matters in this stage too, that picking up a win and having some good things happen for you will at least bring Florida State out of the tunnel with a little bit extra pizzazz on Saturday night.
Yeah, here's the thing. My whole thing is if they do that, and it's an if because we haven't seen it from this team against a quality opponent, for a while, maybe in a couple games. I felt like, especially earlier in the year before things kind of spiraled out of control. If they do that, man, I don't have any doubt they can compete with Florida and maybe win this game. I do not think Florida is this miracle hot team story that we're kind of getting pushed over the last couple of weeks because they do have these two nice wins. I feel like, first of all, those two wins were at home. Second of all, and now they're going to be going on the road. DJ Lagway making his first start away from home, and he's not been lighting the world on fire anyway. Their running game has really been the key to them. So if you can load up and stop the run and force him to make plays on the road in a hostile environment, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. I also think their defense is not – I know that they hit but again, man, they gave up 500 yards last week. Almost had almost 500 yards of offense and had a bunch of drop passes. If they don't turn it over 3 times and go for it on 4th down and get stopped, that game's – they might have gotten blown out. LSU had twice as many first downs as they had. This is not a great defense of Florida. They played well in the red zone, and I don't know what that's – sometimes that, we make a big deal about that. I don't know. Sometimes is that kind of like fumble luck? Is it actually something you're doing in those situations? But, again, I just don't think this is an unbeatable Florida team. I think if Florida State plays hard and plays physical and gives themselves a chance, I'd like to see how this game plays out. If they don't, if they revert to what they were doing earlier this year, they'll get punched in the mouth and get beat pretty easily.
Yeah, I think this is the North Carolina game with their running back. I called him a truth serum player. Like right. He's not going to go down on his own. That kind of a thing. You need to bring him to the ground. This was an offense that headed into Florida State that looked like they weren't going to bail you out. If you're not going to come up and stop the run, you're not going to be physical, we're not going to bail you out. I think you've got a similar situation here. But I would agree with you. Had a long discussion on the JCS today about the SEC's relative strength to other power conferences. And, if the Vandy's of the world, if Oklahoma can beat an Alabama team that was in the top 10, 24-3, this is a more fallible conference at the top level than it has been. If Florida can beat LSU and Ole Miss back-to-back weeks, I know what you're saying, that situations is where Florida won, but if that's possible, if that's in the realm of possibility, then you have a conference that's not far and away above the others, above the Big Ten, even above the ACC. But that all supposes and that all assumes that this Florida State team has learned some lessons, that they have gotten better, that they are going to air it out. We'd love to see that. Luke Kromenhoek is going to be the starter on Saturday night. It took Mike Norvell a little while to answer that question and confirm that Luke was going to be the starter, but he finally did. Certainly his decision about the usage of Luke Kromenhoek on Saturday suggested as much, that he's going to ride with him. But Ira, that would be the key to me this week if we do want to get into the game for a little bit in Florida State's chances. It has to slow down enough for Luke that he'll get rid of the ball and not believe he's going to have 4 and 5 seconds, in that pocket, because Florida's defensive line is much like what Luke was getting hit by in previous weeks. So hopefully this performance, his 3-touchdown performance, allows the game to come to him a little bit quicker and he gets the ball out of his hand a little bit quicker.
Yeah, man, there's a few things I wanted to touch on that you brought up a few different interesting points. The North Carolina game, I agree with you 100%. Their running back is a grown man, and Florida State did not respond to that. I would say that was really the worst possible time for Florida State to be facing that, because North Carolina does not bring the juices out of anybody. Certainly an average North Carolina team. So this scenario is a little bit different. It's similar in that Florida's got physical running backs. They've got a big, really huge, massive running back, but all their running backs really run hard, and their offensive line's physical. So, yeah, if you don't want to be there, you can get embarrassed. I would expect a much hardier effort from Florida State's defense in this game than I would against North Carolina, especially because you said it's the end of a season. I think back to, again, the 2021 game down in Gainesville where, Florida had nothing to play for. They had an interim coaching staff, and their whole goal in that game was to salvage something from their season, was to try to embarrass Florida State. And they were successful, and they kept Florida State out of a bowl game. So, these games do bring out some of those emotions that maybe a midseason game against North Carolina might not. The other thing about Luke, I think, the big question to me, and we talked to Corey and I talked about it in the wrap after the game. I understand why he may have gotten off to a slow start against Charleston Southern, even though Charleston Southern's not any good. It was his first start, and he knew about it apparently on Monday. They told him on Monday he was going to be starting, so he had a week to kind of prepare for that. And that's a good thing, but sometimes it can be a tough thing. It's like starters and relievers in baseball. Sometimes relievers are better because they don't have to dwell on it, and then they try to start, and it's different. So I think what you're hoping if you're Florida State is that the nerves were an issue. Mike Norvell brought it up, and Luke brought it up. So I do think it might have been an issue early in that game. Now the key is when he did settle down and started to play better, can he bring that to this game from the very beginning? Is he past that? Or is now, because you're playing a better opponent in a rivalry game, is it going to go back to the nerves again? So we have to see. I don't know if he knows. I don't know. The coaches certainly don't know. We certainly don't know because it's his second start he's ever making. So that to me is going to be a key. If he can just settle down and play, he'll have to play exceptionally well. He'll have to play better than he did this past Saturday.
Yep.
But you'd like to hope that those first 3 drives were more indicative of just kind of, rushing in the moment and trying to make things that weren't really happen.
So tomorrow on Seminole Headlines, live on this channel at 1 o'clock, if you guys get into the discussion about the Florida game, let's say it's the first thing you discuss. I don't know what your rundown is going to be, but let's say it's 1:07 p.m. Eastern. They got no chance in this game, Ira. That's what you're going to hear. Are you ready for that?
I am beyond ready for that. Yeah, man. Because listen, man, they've been Corey and Jeff, more so Jeff, but I think Corey too, have been, talking up this Florida team. And I get it. I understand that that's what you want to see. You want to see a team that even if your record's not good, that you continue to fight. And I get it. My only thing is I don't think that says – I don't want people to take the next step with that to say, okay, that means Billy Napier has gotten through to his players and Mike Norvell has not gotten through to his players. To me, it's as simple as Florida has a quarterback, that those kids think they have a chance in those games. When they didn't have a quarterback against Texas, they got their ass beat. And so my only point is when you've gone through a season, 6, 7, 8 games, and you can't score on offense and you get down a couple touchdowns, man, we can talk all we want about how much fight we would have in those moments. It's a little bit different in the moment. Florida, right now, they have a quarterback that they're excited about. Florida State does not have that. Now, if Luke plays well, I think that could change. But it's hard. It's going to be hard for those guys to believe right now when he hasn't done it yet. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But I just think that this belief that Florida has turned some amazing corner. I think there's confidence in a young quarterback that's shown some talent, and I also think they've gotten kind of helped out in some of these games by the other teams.
One place you should always have confidence is with State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. He's the man, and he's been a sponsor now of the Smash. This will be a complete second season that he's been a sponsor of the Monday Smash, or whatever day of the week it is. We love our pal Russ Voorhis because he's a Nole through and through, supports the program with a lot of support, if you will, supports warchant.com and has done so over the years, over the decades that warchant.com has existed. If you live in the state of Florida, the state of Georgia, the state of Alabama, you are covered by Russ Voorhis should you want to be. And Ira, again, this is somebody who will take the time to talk through your options with you. Even if you don't choose Russ's service, he will be more than happy to go over options and simplify insurance language to make sure that you know what you're choosing and what you're deciding to opt out of or what you need to strengthen.
Yeah, and he really, puts a lot into his staff and is, he understands how important it is to have a good staff, good people that work for him in terms of, answering people's questions and also directing them where they need to go, providing the information they need. They do it. It's just a really good operation overall. And like you said, they service not just the Jacksonville area where he's based and has the brick and mortar offices, but the tri-state, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. And definitely give them a call, see what the rates are, see what the services they provide are. It's not always about the cheapest rates. Sometimes it's about who you can trust. And I think you can trust Russ Voorhis.
If you want to give him a call in Orange Park, the number is 904-276-9535, 904-276-9535, and head to his website for more information, phone numbers, and contact information. If you're listening on the podcast, it's his name, russvorhis.com, russvorhis.com. Make sure to tell him that you heard about him on Warchant and on The Smash. All right, a quick thing about the quarterback before we get into some questions. I do want to set up one other thing up real quick, everybody. Dominic Robinson, lead football analyst for Warchant.com, will be by shortly. I'd say about 10, 15 minutes. We're going to have Dominic on board. He had some thoughts about the go-go offense, about Brennan Marion. He had some good thoughts, and you know Dominic, he will be 100% blunt for the good and for the bad. There was a mix of that when it came to the go-go offense and Brennan Marion potentially coming to Florida State. So we'll get extended thoughts from Dominic Robinson here soon. I did want to ask you, Ira, about the quarterback situation. Do you think that this is Luke Kromenhoek's game to win or lose, or if he starts slow, do you think that they go to Brock early? What did you take away from the message about Luke's standing in that quarterback room today from Mike Norvell?
Real quick before that, can I answer John McKnight's question in the chat? He says, Norvell has been here 5 years. How do we not have a quarterback? Mm-hmm. I think that's a completely fair criticism of the decision he made to go get DJ Uyunglele. Now, how did that happen? I think he was wrong about this offensive line. I mean, I think that's clear. They thought they were going to be able to run the football. They thought that offensive line would be much better than it is. I think they were blinded a little bit by what it was last year. I think they thought that maybe it was just some injuries and whatever else, that those guys could be a lot better. They are what they are, and they're not good, and they can't run the ball. And then DJ don't have many weapons outside. So I think DJ may have been fine at Oregon State, and he may have been fine at what Mike Norvell thought he had on offense. Yep. But when you didn't have the running game and you don't have special players at receiver, DJ Uyunglele is maybe one of the worst quarterbacks you could have. He's not particularly accurate, and he was not very mobile. So that's where I don't think Mike Norvell, it's just a complete disaster in terms of his decision making about quarterbacks. I think he made a bad decision based on what he thought he had personnel-wise. So that's kind of how I think they got in this mess.
Okay, let's stay there really quickly because, I mean, the season's it's 60 minutes away from being over, and DJ's not playing this weekend. Right. So I think we can speak on this a little bit more. He got hurt in camp, didn't he?
Yeah, for sure. We don't know the extent of the injury, but there was a point in camp when he was not wearing a brace or a sleeve on his knee, and then at some point he started wearing that on his knee, and at that point he stopped running around. But yeah, to your point, talking to people on the staff in the spring and in the summer, they were very confident that his legs would be a factor. So now you take away that as a factor, and you can't run. You're wrong about your offensive line. And that's how you end up with this situation.
Yeah, so it's not like that would have changed everything fundamentally, but
would have helped.
It would have helped because
he at least would have been a willing runner, which he had been earlier in his career. He did not look like a willing runner earlier.
Yeah, he was the rumbling type. Once he gets moving, he gets moving, but you couldn't even get started with it. Okay, so
back to your question. Yeah
it's Luke. Let's just say Luke doesn't start great. I'm sure that's not a stretch because he's been inconsistent, but 2 drives turns to 3 drives where you get uneven results. I'm not saying 3 consecutive turnovers on 3 consecutive plays, but do you think that they could go to 11 in the first half if they don't like what they see early from Kromenhoek?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, we all want to jump to the finish line. Like, we all want to know, what does this mean? So we all kind of make assumptions. So last week when Luke started and didn't play well early and then got basically the whole game, I had a lot of texts from people, I'm sure you did, and everybody's assuming, okay, that means Mike Norvell is telling Brock, Luke's my guy, and you got to start stepping if you don't want to be here. That's possible, but I also think it's possible that if Luke doesn't play well, you might go back to Brock. I don't think Luke has done anything to make Mike Norvell sold 100% that he's definitely the guy. But I think he's going to get every opportunity in this game. And the difference, again, when Luke hasn't played well, he hasn't done what Brock did against Duke. You can't just give the other team the game. That's what Brock did. And, you can break down each individual play and, okay, well, maybe it was a bad play call, or maybe, he just didn't see this linebacker or whatever it was. You can't have 3 straight plays with turnovers backed up that lead to, basically 17 points. And so, to me, I think as long as Luke doesn't do that, I think he'll have a chance. Now, if you get into later in the game, and it's been series after series where Luke's not producing and he's making mistakes in terms of what he's seeing and what he's reading, and you still have a chance, then I think he would go back to Brock Glenn. In fact, before he threw that third down pass to Ja'Kai Douglas, I thought he would go to Brock Glenn pretty soon in that game. But he did make that pass. And then they did have the 25-yarder. And so, or they had the 25-yarder before that. Things started turning around for him. I don't think this is like etched in stone that Luke is definitely 100% the guy, but I think they're going to give him every chance until he proves he can't be. That's my opinion. That's what I think. We'll have to see.
Carol, a question about Luke. Do you think he stays next year? I hope so. I think with the right development, he could be great. Thoughts? I'll add really quickly on your question, Carol. He's got the tools. That's the reason Georgia made an 11th hour overture to try and get him to flip last year. And Luke even referenced that on social media, I believe, where he's like, nope, not doing it. I'm a Nole. He was always going to be more of a raw prospect because he wasn't a lifer in terms of being a quarterback in high school. You can see the tools. If the game would just slow down a little bit for him, he's a true freshman, so it's understandable when it doesn't. But if the game would slow down for him a little bit, you could see where those tools come to life. And it's not like he's immobile too. He can move. I don't know about him staying next year. I know, Ira, you offered some thoughts on that today when you appeared on the JCS. If you want to, echo those or offer some more.
Yeah, and actually, I'll give a little preview. I talked to Coach Henshaw today. We have a Henshaw's House article coming up in the morning, and he talks about this some, kind of his thoughts on what they need to do in the portal, and hoping that those guys stay, but certainly at least Luke stays. If the season ends where Brock knows he's clearly behind Luke, no matter what they do in the portal, I could see Brock Glenn leaving if he is just determined to get on the field and he believes in himself at a level where he thinks he can go win a job somewhere else. I mean, that would be understandable. Luke's been here a year or less. If they've decided that's their guy, then I would get that decision. For Luke, from Luke's standpoint, unless he's just disgusted by the entire program, I don't think it makes sense to leave. It's taken him the better part of a year now to try to learn this offense. If you go somewhere else, he does not have much on film where it's like he's going to get a starting job somewhere else based on what he did this year. So he'd have to be going somewhere else for the hopes of learning their offense and then competing and trying to win a job at that school. And there's no guarantee he's going to do that. I think it makes more sense to stay here. So just thinking about it logically, I think, if Luke comes out of this game is clearly ahead of Brock, I think, I can understand Brock leaving, but Luke, I wouldn't understand it. I think he's only been here 1 year. He's a true freshman. To me, it wouldn't make much sense. If you bring in a portal quarterback, he can learn from that guy. One of the things that I would think Jordan Travis could explain to him is, we can all talk about Mackenzie Milton and that being a bad experiment, that it didn't work. What it did do was Jordan learned how to be a quarterback in terms of all the off the field stuff from Mackenzie Milton. Jordan has talked about this. Mike Norvell's talked about this. Mackenzie knew what it was like to run a quarterback room, to lead practices, to demand things of yourself. And Tom, you were out there at practices. We saw a difference. The Jordan Travis earlier in his career was not the alpha, he was just another guy at practice. Once he won the starting job and learned from Mackenzie about what it means to be a starting quarterback, he changed as a person. He changed as a leader. If I'm Mike Norvell and if I'm Jordan Travis, who I'm sure will have conversations with him, I'm preaching the idea that, listen, man, we're going to try to get a portal quarterback who can help us win, a guy that's done it. Yeah. And you'll learn from that. And then, man, when you hit the ground running, as opposed to trying to fight your way through it next year, that would be my pitch. And I'd like to think Luke would stay. But if he's been so frustrated and disappointed by what it's been like to be here his first season, then maybe he goes ahead and bounces.
Yeah, there was a gravity to Jordan Travis once he figured all those details out. You didn't hear him a lot from where we stand at Hauser Stadium, or if we were inside for the given day of practice, it was raining outside. but you could feel it when he was on the field. There was a gravity, there was a presence there, and his teammates felt it, more importantly. One more question
but that was not there earlier in his career.
You're correct. Oh, yes, you're correct. It was refined. It was something that was developed, and I know people don't want to use that word with his staff, but it was developed. One more question about Luke. What do you make of him being so willing to, go beyond the 4-game threshold? He was asked that question a few weeks ago when he was made available to the media, and he said, whatever the team needs. I find that refreshing in this day and age of college football, because I know, and I don't begrudge any parents or player who's like, man, if I'm only going to be used sparingly, I don't want to lose a year of eligibility. I want to be able to play. I don't think that's the wrong answer either. It's a real human conversation. But what did you make of that? Because to me, it was refreshing that Luke says, whatever we need, I got it. No problem.
Yeah, no, I do. And I'll credit him for, having that mindset. I also think it speaks to his confidence and his family's confidence in what he is. And again, whether he was going to stay at Florida State or leave, him getting opportunities to get on the field and do something and show what he's worth, it is probably going to be better for him. Now, again, I think in the dream scenario, if you're Mike Norvell, you bring in a veteran, experienced quarterback, and he becomes your guy next year with Luke as the understudy, and then Luke, keep him playing only 4 games, and now you're right back on pace. You've redshirted next year, so you're not coming out of those 2 years with only 2 years left to play. And so, I think my guess is that Luke believes in himself, thought if he could get on the field and do what he did on Saturday, maybe have another big game against Florida, he solidifies himself as a possible starter here or somewhere else. I just think it speaks a lot. I'll take him at his word. I think it's a lot about what the team needs, but I also think there's a confidence in himself that the more he plays, the better it's going to be for him.
Trailer Swift on X. How come whenever this staff gets a highly touted recruit athlete, he's always raw, then they then go on to not develop him? I think Jordan Travis would be one of those cases where they did develop the player. I think Jerrion Jones got developed here. I think Johnny Wilson got developed here. I think Jared Verse got developed at Florida State. He'll tell you that. They're not over in that department. They're not over. But I hear you. You don't hear a lot of high school recruits' names in that discussion. Some of them are portal players, but they're guys that are brought in and they're improved. What do you think about that particular issue, Ira?
Yeah, man. My belief, and I think D-Rob and I talked about this probably a month ago on the show. On this show, I just believe players are, especially at skill positions. Players they have it or they don't. I don't think you're going to develop. They brought, if you're a talented wide receiver, it's going to be pretty obvious pretty early on. If you're not a talented wide receiver, you're not a natural catcher of the ball, it's not going to be as obvious. Now you could take some developmental players, and I think this is where college football is going to be changing a little bit. And I think Mike Norvell needs to change with the times. There have been guys historically that you would sign who aren't going to be ready in a couple of years, but you see something in them. Kentron Portier was a perfect example. Didn't play any football, really much football till late in his high school career, but he was a basketball player, had some athletic ability. FSU was in a tough spot at that point in terms of getting playmakers. So he's a guy that you're trying to develop. You're just not going to hit on all those guys. Developmental players, there's a little bit of a gamble there, and you're hoping that over time they develop into something. But a lot of times the players that people talk about, you didn't develop, and you got to get better players. And I think that's been the problem. They have not hit enough. They have not recruited it well enough on the high school level. Part of that, I think, is because they've been so focused on the portal, especially flipping the roster. But I just think the word develop to me is a little overblown. Get better players, and they'll play better.
Certainly, that helps matters for every coach. Some of the coaches that we think of as, dullards, they got fired shortly after their best player leaves. Happened at Auburn when Cam Newton won a national championship. Like, Cam makes a difference. Michael Dyer at running back makes a hell of a difference. A lot of guys that run that Auburn defense too. That's one program. There are so many of those. One more question. I see Dominic Robinson is on deck. We will welcome him into the Monday Smash in just a second. But we would be remiss, Ira, if we didn't address the elephant in the room of the changes. Easy Living 247. Ira, do you believe any coach announcements will be made by Sunday, or will it take longer, in your opinion? What do you think?
Yeah, I really hope there's at least some. The challenge, and what's going to be interesting here, I was reading Chad Simmons from On3 had an article up today. It's on our homepage. If you're a subscriber, you can read it. Where he interviewed Solomon Thomas, the 5-star offensive lineman from Jacksonville, who's been committed to Florida State for a long time. Alex Atkins was his guy. Alex Atkins gets fired. People assume Solomon's going to decommit. He has stayed with them so far. And in his comments to Chad Simmons, he said, I need to know who the offensive line coach is going to be. I love Mike Norvell. I love Florida State. I want to be at Florida State, but I need to know who that offensive line coach is going to be because that's going to be who I'm playing for. And I want to make sure we're on the same page. The fact that he believes that could come before signing day, and then he made a comment that he may not sign on the 4th, maybe he would sign on the 5th to give it as much time as he needs, makes me think that Mike Norvell believes, or is at least leading him to believe, yeah, man, we're going to have an offensive line coach named by this weekend or early next week. And if that's the case, I kind of feel like you have to know who the offensive coordinator is going to be, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to hire an O-line coach before you know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. So, Mike Norvell has kind of hedged his bets and saying they're willing to wait if these coaches are busy with their playoffs and championship games. But reading the tea leaves there, it makes me think that Mike Norvell thinks he's going to be able to make some announcements. And I have not, from people I've talked to, I've not gotten confirmation one way or the other. So I don't know for sure what's going to happen, but that's the latest thing that's kind of making me think they feel like they're going to have an answer, if not by Sunday, then early in the week.
When the tea leaves turn into text and sentences, you got to go to warchant.com to find out in real time on the Tribal Council. Like that little segue. There we go. It's called it's the 150 special, everybody. Here's how you get signed up to join us at warchant.com, the largest FSU fan community. If you enjoy what we do here for free on Warchant TV, you can join the message board community, the Tribal Council, the Premium Recruiting Board, and others to talk to the largest FSU fan community on the internet. We're the largest fan base here at warchant.com. We are so proud to be that and to host an awesome product with Ira's work, Corey's work, Michael and Matt in recruiting, the multimedia stuff that we bring to you, the intel from Gene Williams as well on Florida State's coaching search. It's all available to you at warchant.com. And if you've always wanted to give us a try, now you can do it. $1 for 7 days of access, followed by 50% off your first year at warchant.com. No promo code is needed whatsoever. Just go to warchant.com. You sign up, use the annual subscription option, and this is how it's going to run for you. $1 for a week. Let us earn your business. You join us at warchant.com, you will be absolutely hooked. Ira, anything you want to promote on the way out before we welcome D-Rob in tonight? Or you want to push some people again with the 150 special? Your choice before we sign off with you for the evening.
Yeah, no, we, as I mentioned earlier, that Henshaw's house will be coming in the morning. We'll have plenty of coverage this week going into, we posted a ton of recruiting articles last week. There's a lot going on there. Even though we're all worried about this recruiting class, they are making a lot of efforts to kind of get what they can out of that signing period, which starts next Wednesday. And take advantage of that special now before it goes away. And I wish I could stay around for D-Rob, but 3's a crowd. So you guys enjoy the conversation. I will be watching it from my living room as I eat dinner. So have fun talking to D-Rob.
There's usually a glorified whiteboard, and by that I mean all 22 when Dominic Robinson and I share the screen. So I look forward to this. We'll join it in 15 seconds. Florida Man in Alabama says, when's D-Rob joining the FSU staff? Well, who knows? But D-Rob is joining the Warchant.
He's ours now, buddy. He's ours right now.
That is right. In 15 seconds, you'll see him on your screen after this message from State Farm agent Russ Fortis.
Contact Russ Fortis for an auto quote today.
Having flashbacks to the Warchant watch-alongs. I'm on a live broadcast with Dominic Robinson. How's it going, D-Rob? Welcome to the program tonight.
It's great, man. Great to see you. Happy Monday to all the Victory Monday to all our Seminoles out there. We are our second one of the year. Haven't had many of these.
Just in time for Thanksgiving to get our second win of the season, right?
Yeah, man. We'll take them though. We'll take any of them that we can get.
So your questions for Dominic Robinson, please provide them in the chat. We will do our best to get to all of them. Dominic, I just wanted to get your thoughts generally for folks that may not have checked out the Brendan Marion video. We're going to get to that part of it in a second. But when there's change on a staff, and this is significant change. It's not a head coach, but coordinators and position coaches on their way out, on their way in. What goes through a player's mind in those moments, either from your own experiences or experiences of your fellow players of your time, maybe your son's experience? What is that like, and what are some things that people don't really get a grasp for when these changes happen?
Yeah, listen, man, it's way, way more difficult and way more nuanced than I can even describe or that anybody would ever even imagine. I think what we miss a lot of times is we forget that when you started the season, and the season goes back to December of the year prior. So you start building this thing, during bowl practice. Essentially, after you play Florida, you kind of start building for the next season. Even if you have a bowl game, or whatever it is, especially now, it's not putting a bow on last season anymore. It's now, this is next year's team. Those guys are gone. So many guys don't play the bowl game anymore, in terms of, whatever injuries or going to the draft or transferring. So it really is a group of guys who are really bonding together. Well, you have to include the coaches in that group. It's not just the players, and the players are bonding themselves with the coaches. So when these guys leave, it is not what people think, where it's like, oh, thank God he's gone. We need it's not what you read in the media. Oh, we needed new blood. We needed somebody to recruit better. It's, you lose a family member, and there is a mourning period, and sometimes it's shorter than others. And the room is always divided on these issues. You're going to have guys that are good writtens, and then you're going to have guys who are going to feel betrayed because they were recruited by these guys. These guys sat in their living rooms. They broken bread. They're attached to their children. They have relationships with their kids, and they eat dinners with them and all these other things. So there's so much that goes into it, and it's why you can never discredit. We're joking about getting our second win, and maybe that it's just Charleston Southern, but honestly, man, those games are really hard. Even with a bye, preparing for those games are very difficult because there's so much routine in football, like a ridiculous amount of routine. All these things lead to the next thing. The game on Saturday leads to treatment on Sunday and film, meetings with this coach, the interview or the introduction to the next game plan. All these things build. Well, once you remove one person from that routine, that upsets the whole routine. The whole ecosystem kind of falls apart. So that's why it's hard to win. And I mean, the week after, a guy gets fired, and why it's so amazing. You see it at the pro level all the time when guys are just going nuts after a win, when coaches get fired and things. So yeah, I think the thing that gets missed a lot is the relationship that this was a human being who sat in my living room when I was just a kid, 17 years old, promised me something that I believed, that I believed was, that I wanted to join, that I wanted to be a part of, promised that we were going to build something with the thought that we were going to build this thing together. And that's no longer there. And I don't know whose fault it is. A lot of times you want to, just like any morning, you want to place blame somewhere. You want to be mad at something or someone. You want to blame the head coach. You want to blame the AD. You want to blame the president. You want to blame the school. There's a lot of things that are emotions. And these guys are kids. They're highly, they're testosterone filled teenage or young, just post teenage age young men. and there's a lot of thoughts, feelings, and emotions that are going, and never mind, at the end of that is a test, which is the game that you have to play. That is an incredibly hard game where somebody's trying to take your head off for 60 to 70 snaps. So there's just a lot. I could go on and on about that whole deal, because there's so many things that people miss in that process. But the hardest part is just you're losing a family member, essentially, and it'll never be the same. You'll never sit in those rooms with them again. You'll never have the conversations that you had with them again. You've had some very deep conversations about what you want to achieve in life with these people, and they've decided that they want to help you, that they're in your corner. And so you lose that person, and they're still in your corner, but you lose the day-to-day grind and the day-to-day build, for those guys.
You see it often in the college or professional level when an interim coach wins a game. They usually cut to the locker room because it's news when an interim coach wins a game. So you see more of these post-game situations, but there's always so much emotion that comes through the camera lens every single time you see it. Or a coach that's fighting for their job, and players, this is like their last stand. They're going to make their final case to keep that coach. I remember a Clay Helton locker room from years ago. I think it was at USC.
Yeah.
That final game, man, it was the outpouring of emotion after that game was over. You see that kind of stuff all the time. But Florida State is going through that transition, and people want to know your thoughts on it, Dominic. So, Brad, you can clarify.
Wait, hold on. I did want to say, too, I saw it firsthand. Ron Zook at Florida, they had already fired him, and then he came to Tallahassee and beat us, and the players really rallied around that. And then I saw it with Tommy Bowden, where Dabo has told me specifically that we saved his job. We went to Clemson and lost the game at Clemson, and those guys, that wasn't a very good Clemson team, and they played they played the game of their lives that night and found a way to beat us. And we were a very good team that year, ended up going to the Sugar Bowl, and that was a really good team, with Anquan Bolden and some of those guys, Greg Jones. And so I've seen it firsthand, where you're getting something out of players, and that all comes back to the relationship piece. Is just when you hear that a guy is going to lose his job and you are partly responsible for that, it does something to you. It definitely moves you in a certain way.
I'd forgotten about the Zook one. I think they might have put him on their shoulders as they walked.
They did. They absolutely did. In Doak.
I remember
that was a bad one, because that wasn't a good Florida team either. That was not a very good Florida team, and we laid an egg that day.
I was a pissed off high school student who loved Florida State to see him there. I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
And then they made the right call on the next hire for wins, didn't they?
They did.
Zook stocked the cupboard, and then Urban took it and ran with it.
Absolutely.
Brad King wants to know, and this is, I think, an oversimplification of your stance on Brennan Marion, because I was with you as we recorded this. But who do you like for offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator? Are they on Florida State shortlist or no? You're not big on Marion. Again, I was there for that. I don't think that's what you said. And then your defensive coordinator thoughts.
So I'll say I don't necessarily want to. I don't know if you want to ask me some names, Tom. I can kind of because I don't want to throw, because of my personal relationships, I don't want to say anyone's name and give anything away and that sort of way. But if you want to throw some names, I will say again, I think Brennan Marion is a very talented coach. I just don't know that he's right for the OC job here. Not that, and I do think that if he does get the job, he will do a good job. But it all comes down to the relationship between Coach Norvell and himself, how much power he has or doesn't have. But he's a very good coach. He's very talented, and he's very creative, which I think would be good. And I do think he will speak up in a room that needs, some words spoken. But what I wanted you guys to all know was, and I witnessed it this weekend because UNLV played on Friday night. I watched the game for a little bit, and then I went back and watched the condensed version. And multiple times, you guys are going to hear this a bunch about this go-go offense, the go-go offense, the go-go offense. 90% of the time when the announcers are referencing the go-go offense, it's not even go-go offense. It's just offense.
Yep.
It's just it's just guys running. It's just the guy calling a play. But anytime something good happens, because they've caught on to this phrase, which is actually brilliant by Brendan Marion. Actually, when you think about it, is if you can have some sort of hook, your name will get bumped up, the line, in terms of if you run an offense and I run an offense, but mine has a name, a catchy name, then my name will get thrown out in the media a lot more because I have a catchy name. I run the no huddle offense, the K gun, the old K gun with Buffalo, when the Buffalo Bills were running just shotgun, I guess. I don't even know what the K gun was.
Yeah. I noticed on that broadcast. So first of all, a couple of things. Number one, they did pull some guards that night. They ran a couple of you saw that, like guard pulls.
I did, and I was like, I just put out a video that says he doesn't like pulling guards,
well,
and he
showed
me up.
Well, it must have been the monsoon. He's like, it's gonna rain. I got to do all kinds of weird stuff because it's gonna be a monsoon in NoCal tonight.
Yeah, shout out to Brendan Marion for watching our show, though, Tom.
Yeah.
Don't you love that? We're reaching UNLV.
Well,
somehow he pulled guards and hadn't pulled guards for like 5 years.
Yeah, a couple of GGs. Maybe for go-go. Maybe that's why he did it. He didn't do GT because it's for go-go. But even Petros, who's on the broadcast, I know he's a big West Coast radio host. But he was talking about, so many times, that's why they call the quarterback's number here. I'm like, my man, that's a read option. They got a triple option running there, and he's keeping it. I don't think they call the quarterback's number. I did like what I saw. I don't know if you did. Just some of those triple option looks out of the go-go formation, out of the sidecar formation.
Yeah.
That does look like it's a bit of a headache, especially if you got a guy who can, there was a third down conversion they had in the first half where I think all three of the options probably would have gotten the yards that they needed to move the chains. Like that does put an old school headache on defenses that you don't typically see anymore.
It is. Yeah. And it's the typical headache or sort of conundrum that all the option offenses, present. It's not anything different or anything it's you got to cancel the dive, then you got to cancel the quarterback, then you got to cancel the pitch, and on every play you have to be responsible for those things. And so within your defensive package, so in the short term it could be challenging in this conference in the short term, but it's not something that's going to freak out. No other ACC teams are going, man, I really hope he doesn't come over here with the go-go offense because we're not ready for that. And that's not like a slight at him at all. That's just, I'm just being honest. Like right now, I'm just a high school coach. I could prepare for the go-go offense and be totally fine. I wouldn't be intimidated by going against it as if, and again, because the announcers, what I want you guys to know is just the announcers are going to make you think that it's this innovative, revolutionary thing. And every time a play is made, they're going to make you think, oh, the defensive coordinator is scratching his head. He's never seen anything like this. And it's not like that. The two backs are just on the same side, but we would treat it the same way as if he was a Y off, which we see every week. It's just the two guys that are off are just on the same level instead of being 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. That's all it is.
It's a t-shirt, not a brain teaser. That's what you're saying. It's good for selling t-shirts.
It's great. And it will do that. And if you have success, some of the schools that I've heard his name being attached to, I'm going, man, if he has some success there, that's a marketing, that's a marketer's dream, and so again, like it's smart on him. It made me start thinking, all right, if I start putting an offense together, I got to put a name to it just for fun. not for any substance, but just because it will bump your name up
and then trademark it too. So you got to be able to claim
exactly
those dollars.
exactly.
So we're going to deviate on that question because instead of names, Brad King is asking what qualities are you looking for? There you go. There's something general. So if you're Mike Norvell, what qualities are you looking for in your OC and DC?
That's great. I think the number one thing is going to have to be you're going to have seamless communication between both Coach Norvell, or between the three people, Norvell, the OC, and quarterback coach, and then whoever the quarterback is. This comes back to what I said a couple weeks ago. It's not just about that communication being seamless, but it's also having the right people in terms of how you evaluate them. And this was something I don't think you had stepped away, but this was something that Ira and I talked about the last time that I was here on the Smash, was the talent evaluation of these players, and getting it right has to become priority one. It's not just about getting the very, very best guy, because if the very best guy, that's the 5-star off the charts, all elite 11 guy, if you can't communicate and get the best out of him, then it's not the best guy. And this is exactly what happened with Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis, I said it a billion times on our multiple shows and on everywhere that anyone that would listen, he was the guy to do what he did to bring us back. Like it was perfect. He was a perfect fit for what Coach Norvell wanted to do as an offensive player, and then the players around him, the leadership qualities that he had and the character that he had was exactly what we needed. And so the guy that you want to bring in here has got to be a great recruiter, in that, not that he just can stockpile and bring in the fancy toy, but how is his relationship and communication with Coach Norvell and with the actual quarterbacks, and then I will say, and this is why I do think Brennan Marion would be great. I think having a certain level of creativity is also, I think, important, because at least in the short time, we're not going to have the players that maybe some of these other schools are going to have, especially after this year. And so there's ways to win with a lower talent level than your opponents. And you see teams do it, year in and year out. I think TCU did it 2 years ago when they made it to the national championship. I think SMU is doing it right now. And again, this isn't that these guys don't have good players or even great players. They do, but they don't have enough. They don't have the same as Georgia and Tennessee and Oregon even. They don't have that many, but you can still find ways to get wins. There's still certain things that you can do, but you have to be creative. You can't just say, hey, this is my offense, and then we just go. And again, that's one reason why I do think Brennan Marion is a good fit, because he's been in challenge situations where he didn't have a bunch of talent. And we need somebody that can think that way. That's okay. I don't have to have, Jaheim Bell and Keon Coleman in order to win. And I'm not saying that's the only reason why we won, but it shouldn't have to just be that, know?
Yeah.
And again, I've been on, I'm on wax, saying you got to win one-on-one battle. So you got to have dudes. It's the name of the game. You got to have guys. But anyway, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent. That's what I think we need from a coaching standpoint. I think you just need a guy that has sort of those qualities of not just recruiting just to recruit, not stockpiling a bunch of guys, but the right guys that fit what you want to do, as a team, who you want to be as a program. Jordan Travis, he really signified strongly like who we are. When you watch him play, it was like, that's what a freaking Seminole looks like. It's what he acts like his character, everything about him. he fit. And so, yeah, that's what I think you want. You want to find guys who are going to, kind of maximize that.
Well, and Marion does have his stripes earned in some sense that, everywhere he's been, the quarterback has been an all-conference player. He'll tell you that. He's proud of that, and he should be proud of that. He's elevated the quarterbacks, and we'll see if he does take the job here, if that's something that will happen. Brad asking one more thing because of the contribution. Thank you, Brad. We'll cut you to the front of the line. Do you like Norvell's scheme more than Marion's? Same formations with multiple plays that can be run out of them. Do you think it's the same? Because, again, part of the video, there are some differences in how they run their schemes. But what do you think comparing the two?
So the comparable thing is that I believe Coach Norvell likes two backs. And this is going back to Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
When I watched the Memphis stuff, I think I watched his final 2 years at Memphis.
Yeah.
And I kept getting the feel, I can't remember which year it was, whether if it was 2 years before he came or his final year there. But 1 year it was like almost all two back. And then the other year I felt like whenever he needed a play, he went to two back, but he didn't have the guys, I think, to run two back as much or something. It was something like that. But I always got the feel that he liked two back. And I get the same thing when I watch Brendan Marion. I feel like he runs other stuff, but he wants to be in two back. And as versatile as those guys are, that will be sort of the extent of how he uses the two backs.
Mm-hmm.
And the year that I loved watching Norvell, where I felt like he was really good and they made it to the conference championship, they had a back that was, was a runner. And then they had a back that was more Toa Philly, where he was a runner, but he was more a ball in space, screen pass catcher. And it just looked like, honestly, watching it, I felt like he was having fun, like Norvell. I felt like calling plays was when he had those two guys was a lot of fun. And when I watch Brendan Marion, I kind of see the same thing. So I personally think Norvell's scheme has more depth to it from what I've seen. But I also will tell you, UNLV lost their quarterback after week 4. So everything that I'm watching from week 4 on, I'm kind of sort of grading on a curve because he's clearly not, playing cards with the full deck. I can see that he's having to tamper down some of the things he wants to do. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I got to go back and look at the year, prior. But I felt like when they had their guy before he took his red shirt, they were very versatile and multiple, but it still didn't feel like as much as Coach Norvell. So
a little bit of two back this weekend. I believe the shot to Danzy, who you love. We looked at that all 22 of how he can fly, the true freshman. They had a shot play to him that they hit. It was a little underthrown, but it was completed. There's a little two back there. We'll see. Again, it's all contingent on Marion getting the job. Eric wants to know about coordinator hires. What's your opinion on them having been play callers compared to coordinators who have no experience play calling? How much does play calling matter in the grand discussion?
Man, that's such a great question. So here's the deal. I believe that one of the greatest indictments of the head coach and sort of one of the best indicators of a very, very good head coach is one that if they can hire someone who has no experience play calling and sort of apprentice them in that process. Because there are some brilliant, Mike McDonald, who's at the Seahawks now, was at the Ravens and wasn't a play caller, became a play caller, and then now he's a head coach. I think Jesse Minter, who's at San Diego with the Chargers now, I think he's sort of on that path. He was at Michigan. He's now the DC at the Chargers. He's killing it with the Chargers. They're having a really good year. Got to see them play live a couple weeks ago. And, but wasn't a play caller, was actually under McDonald. Now that I think about it, it's kind of the same tree. He was under Mike McDonald at Michigan, wasn't a play caller, became a play. So the point I'm trying to make is I don't like just defaulting to the guy has always called plays, therefore he's a good coach. That's not true, and that doesn't bear out. Plenty guys who've been calling play calls, been play callers for 10, 15 years are terrible play callers, and they get away with it because of nepotism or whatever it is, or whatever the reason. So I do think, though, it does tell you a lot about the head coach and the system. Obviously, like Nick Saban and I think Kirby's trying to do the same thing, but Nick Saban has a history of we run one system. So when you come in here, you learn the system and you learn how to call plays within that system. And then if you want to branch out and you go somewhere else and you do your own thing. And so I think that is a really strong indicator of like a very good coach that's running a very good system. And so, so that's what I don't, my opinion is if you can find a guy brilliant enough, he doesn't need to have experience play calling. But you can't just also cut him loose. You got to have a very strong room. So like to me, you surround him with other guys who are either have experience play calling or are on that same sort of path where these are other brilliant minds who maybe haven't had the experience and now they're kind of going through it together, but he has the ultimate say in the end. To me, that's the best way. And then now you're building your coaches up, you're building your players up. Everybody kind of everybody is a part of this process of getting the one play called, and then it all kind of falls on his feet in the end.
I want to ask more about play calling another time, maybe in the off season, just about the feel of it. Like the feel of it. It's like feeling. I'm sure the feedback you get in your foot if you're driving a car through the pedal. Like there's probably something that you're getting feedback back and forth, but that would be in the weeds because we're getting some more questions about the now for Florida State. Andrew wants to know, would GM Dominic Robinson get a portal quarterback, or is true freshman Luke Kromenhoek the guy to survive 2025?
I think you got to go to the portal. Yep. I honestly, I hate that answer. I wish that didn't exist. But it's just in today's day and age, if you don't go to the portal, and for instance, this year, Miami goes to the portal and gets a Cam Ward, are you running your football business to the best of your abilities? And the answer would be no. If you don't even try, if you just settle for what you have, and then your competitors, especially your rivals, go sign up a guy who's going to be a first-round draft pick the following year. You just can't do it, So that's now again, all things, if it was me, like I wouldn't want to, but I would feel like you just have to, in order to. Now, again, and it becomes back to like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to survive, or are you trying to win the conference? If you're trying to win the conference, then yeah, you go to the portal and you go get someone. If you're just trying to survive, yes, you can roll with Luke, take your lumps, go 5-7 or 7-5 if you get a couple bounces, and and build for the future. And that, to me, 10 years ago, that would have been the answer. Mm-hmm. 5 years ago, even, that probably would have been my answer. But in today's day and age, with how competitive it is and how much of a business it is, you can't run your business that way. The shareholders will be pissed. And especially after a historically bad season, it's just bad optics to not, it looks like you're not trying if you don't. So
your hand is forced by outside forces. Now, this is correct. A great segue. This is the second to last question from Grammar Hero. Realistically, does Norvell turn this program around next year? With what you know about how college football works now, there does seem to be more year-to-year volatility, and which would be to Florida State's benefit in this situation. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I don't feel like I'm the right person to ask, just because I tend to be impartial, but I am a lifelong Seminole fan. And I can't answer this question any other way than absolutely. How could he not? I mean, how could you not have, a year that's better than the worst year that you've ever had? So it depends on what your definition of turning it around is. If your definition, again, like I said, if your definition is 5-7, which I think is realistic and would probably be like a good year. I'm trying to think, what was his first year?
It was the COVID season. He won 5 games in 2021, which was kind of the first year because COVID.
Yeah, because of COVID.
Was so
that's honestly, like, to me, that's the bar.
Yeah,
I personally think the bar is 5 wins, and I think if we were to return to 5 wins, and then, like I said, maybe you get a bounce here and there, you're looking at a 7 win. That would be like a realistic way to look at the season. But like you said, in today's college football, it wouldn't shock me one bit if they were to go 10-2 and win the ACC. That can happen. Turnarounds like that are not going to be, 1 in a million anymore. You're going to see these huge swings from year to year, with both the transfer portal and with more kids staying instead of going in the draft, because if I stay, I can increase my draft status and I can still make more money than I would have made if I was drafted.
Yeah.
The combination of those two things, college football is going to be, and has been, honestly, it has been the most unpredictable thing that we've seen, in a long time. I don't, and just a little sidebar. Why does anyone ever, and why is there even a preseason ranking? Like, I always felt that even when I was playing, I always thought these guys don't know they weren't here in the spring. Like, who came and watched us in the spring? Like, how did they know, what certain guys are going to do or not do? I've always was driven crazy by the preseason rankings and like the preseason all conference stuff. I always thought that was ridiculous, but I really, really hate it now. Like, now you really don't know anything.
We had this discussion today on JCS on the channel on Jeff Cameron show, because it prejudices you when it comes this time for the playoff rankings, because
absolutely
your first playoff ranking is based on the polls, and so it's an echo chamber. Like, if you looked at for example, like, Texas is a good team this year, but if you looked at their achievements, the teams they beat and who they lost to, and the circumstances of their games, that ain't murderer's row of a schedule either. Should they be in the field? Sure. But you would look at them very differently if there wasn't a number assigned to their name in the preseason. If you just took them for what they were, and you would look at them with a little bit more of a qualifier. Like, right now, it's like, oh, well, Texas is in this other world. This is before Quinn Ewers got hurt. Don't get me wrong. But you look at their resume. It's okay. But it's not this other thing where they have been for most of the season. And there are a lot of examples like that. I think conferences, it shakes out that way for conferences too. The SEC, Dominic, has had a lot of low-level teams beat a lot of upper-tier teams this year. Is that because the SEC is just wildly better top to bottom, or is that because the top has come back to the middle a little bit? I think it's the latter, personally. What do you think?
Yeah. I think there's just way more parity in college football than there ever has been, and that's going to continue. It's going to get even crazier. And honestly, in college sports, it's great. Kids go to more places than they ever have. They're making choices based on information that we never made, again, even just 10 years ago. So yeah, you're getting these matchups where, everybody has a chance, and it's way more competitive. And so, yeah, I do think that the SEC is, I don't know that I guess you could say it's falling closer to the mean,
Yeah.
And that's again, just because I don't think it's an indictment on the SEC. I think that's just the reality of college athletics and really college football in general is more players are spreading out.
Yep.
They're not worried about getting exposure. Nobody's worried about getting drafted because they go to a team who is going to be 7-5 and not make the playoff. Players that when I was coming out, that was a huge concern. You almost always made a choice. The top 100 players almost always made the choice to go to the schools that were in the top 10 to 15. Very rarely did you have a guy pick a school outside of the top 10. That was in the top, 20 or 25 in the country. So that's just way more common now. So
yeah, it's look, to be clear, SEC to me is still the best conference in America, but
without question.
But the gap isn't what it used to be, and it's just we've got ourselves a ball game now where this 12-team playoff, you're not going to know what's going to happen in a lot of these situations. That's what makes it better. Here's the last question. I love this one. It's a position that's near and dear to your heart, but it's also one that's open for Florida State. B Sizzle wants to know what makes up a good wide receivers coach.
Okay, so I was coached by who I think was one of the best wide receiver coaches ever. His name is Henry Ellard. Henry Ellard played receiver for the Rams and maybe the Dolphins. I'm not positive, but Henry Ellard played for a really long time. I think understanding the nuances of the position. So the one thing that I think plagues a lot of receiver coaches is having a cookie cutter approach, meaning like if I have a Ja'Kai Douglas and then I have, Johnny Wilson, for instance, I got to coach those two guys completely different. Like they have completely different skill sets. They may see the game way differently because one may have been like a high school quarterback or a running back or something like that. So when I got to the Rams, it was the first time that I was ever told that there isn't one release. Like you aren't forced to release off of the line, off press one way. You have, it's a canvas that you can paint on. And there were certain plays where, yes, you have to release outside or inside or whatever it is. But that really like opened my world to a whole set of circumstances that I had never been in as a wide receiver, as a player. And so that I think is probably the number one thing that I would say like makes a great wideout coach is the ability to communicate with tall, short, slower, maybe a guy that's quick twitch versus a guy who maybe is like a DK Metcalf. The ability to not coach. If I do get it, like there's guys that would get a DK. Matter of fact, I was just talking about this last week. There are places where DK Metcalf would have got drafted and we never would have seen that guy make a Pro Bowl. Like, and now we watch him and we go, man, he's one of the best in the game. But if he doesn't go to Seattle, a lot of places probably give up on him because he is not refined in the way of route running or use him schematically in a way that maximizes his talent and ability. And that's those coaches. That's how Henry Ellard was with us. So we had Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, Sean McDonald, Dane Looker, and then there was Brian Curtis was the other wideout. All of those guys had completely different skill sets. Like Isaac and Torrey were not the same at all. They were Torrey was very methodical, real smooth moving. Isaac was incredibly quick twitch. So, Hop Ellard, he coached them differently. And I was seeing that for the first time. When I was at Florida State, we were pretty much all coached the same, but we were all very different. Like I was a lot different than Crefonzo Thorpe, for instance, or Chris Davis. And, so when I got there and saw that really opened up my eyes both as a player and then, eventually as a coach. And that's sort of the way that I try to coach now is, you do no cookie cutter approach to wide receiver play. Some guys are going to be incredibly physical, and that was Anquan Bolden. And then some guys are going to be aren't going to be physical at all. But either way, I have to get a guy to block in the run game. Yeah. So how do I approach that? How do I communicate that? How do I get that done? Maybe one guy uses a release and just runs off guys, where the other guy I actually have stalk blocking. And so I got to know as a coach, how can I communicate and get that done? And I can't. Where coaches mess up is they'll get mad at the guy who doesn't want to headbutt and stalk block, and then maybe not even play him for a year or a couple games, or if it's a game where we're going to run the ball a lot, they might not use a guy when his talents are useful to give us an opportunity to win a game. So you got to find a way to get him out there, even if he's not going to maybe do the thing that, you feel is optimal, but it's still going to be good enough that we can win, Yeah. So I think that's a big part of wideout play where guys miss is they approach a job like you got to do it this way. And either it's because that's the only way they know, or if they do know multiple ways, they're just stubborn and think that's the only way that you can win. And I don't believe that. I think there's multiple ways that you can skin a cat, and it's up to you as the coach to meet the player where they're at, and there's compromises everywhere.
Well, two thoughts on that. Number one, here's hoping the new wide receiver coach does what you're asking or suggesting, because we could use some blocking to improve. It was really nice there for a couple of years, Dominic. It really was, with Pittman and Johnny, and that was such a
Micah Pittman was a aberration, man. That guy was a one of one, but I do think his that he set a culture that lasted after he left. And I hope I get to see him at some point and thank him for that, because that group, even after he left, they were fun as hell to watch. I mean, they really got after it in the run game and on screens and all of that. And that there was a want to about it. You could see that that group took as much pride in that as catching a ball.
They did.
And that's what you want. Like, you want a group like that. And that's not normal, but that's it's a special thing when you can get it.
Yeah, I asked Coach Dugans. It was just after Pittman had transferred to Utah, and it was a season preview. I said, so, what is it about Johnny's ability to block? And he said, well, actually, Micah started it, and I challenged Johnny that if that little guy can do it, why can't you? And so he said that resonated, and it started the domino effect. Last thing, just an educational point for everybody. Henry Ellard was a bad man in the NFL.
Yeah. Hell yeah, he was.
He's currently still 15th in league history in receiving yards. 15th with 13,777 yards across, let's see, how many seasons did he play?
How many years did he play? 17?
16 years.
Yeah.
16 years in the league. And he averaged, by a 17-game average, is the new way they measure it, it would be a 1,000-yard season every year. But he played in so many seasons where passing wasn't the thing it is now. And so to be 13,777 that's one hell of a career, man. He's
that was my coach.
Learn from.
Yeah,
wow.
That was my coach, man. Where all did he play?
So he played for the Rams forever, from drafted until age 32. Then he went and played in Washington at 33 years old. For 5 years, and he made a stop in New England for a cup of coffee. He played 5 games for the Patriots, and that was the end of that. He had 5 catches for 86 yards in a New England uniform, but 9,761 yards for the Rams in the 80s. That's doing some work in that generation, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, that was my coach, man, and he a lot of what you guys get from me comes from Henry Ellard. That's for sure, because he really changed the way that I coach and really look at the game. He coached a way different way than I was coached in high school, especially and even in college. And so kind of set my coaching philosophy.
He was a tough dude too. 5'11", 180 in that era of the NFL. You had to be tough. He came from the West Coast FSU, Fresno State. So that wraps up tonight's edition of the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. We hope you enjoyed the program, the blend of information about the coaching stuff that is to come this weekend, perhaps, hires and so forth, the Florida game itself, Luke Cromenhawk, and then, of course, Dominic's breakdowns of all things X's and O's specific to Florida State. If you all enjoyed it, please hit the thumbs up underneath the video, subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. And Dominic, I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, man. I hope you have a good one. Are you reuniting the whole family, or are you doing it in stages because of football life? How's it working?
Yeah, no, we're all going to LA. We'll go to my mom's house, and Deuce will be there, and yeah, it's gonna be great. Have a couple guys from the team over, and yeah, it'll be. I'm excited. Thanksgiving's the best.
It is. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there, and appreciate the insights as always tonight, Dominic. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Happy Thanksgiving. Go Noles.
Go Noles. Thank you to Director Ben Spicer behind the scenes and to Irish O'Fell, and always to our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Good night. We'll talk to you soon here on Warchant TV, live 1 o'clock tomorrow with Seminole Headlines. Wake Up Warchant will be in your pod feeds at midnight. Good night, everybody.